All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Brent, and you're listening to the LJS podcast, episode number 14, where today I'm going to be talking about 10 important jazz standards that you need to know and why. This list of jazz standards is a list that is not only important because it's likely that these songs will be called on jam sessions and gigs, but also because there's something special about each one that you can learn that will help you with the rest of your jazz repertoire and the rest of your jazz playing in general. So I'm excited to dive into this list in a second here, but before we do that, I just want to say that all the music on today's show is by jazz harmonica player Ivanek Pranay. It's off of his album Breathe. So if you like this music, if you want to buy this album, which I hope you do, you can go on to CD Baby, look up Ivanek Pranay Breathe. And if you can't spell his first name, it's Yvonnick Pranay, Prene. So look up his album on CD Baby. And if you're on the website, you can see the link in the show notes. And one last thing before we dive into the show is if you get value out of today's show, if you learn something important and that helps you with your jazz playing, consider adding value back. This podcast, it's 100% funded by listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show today, it's helped you out, there's a support button beneath the player. If you're on the website, you can leave us a one-time or monthly donation. And if you're not on the website, you can go to learnjazzstandards.com/support and help us out there. We thank you so much for your help, and we thank everybody who has given to the show thus far. You're the ones keeping this going week after week and helping us keep produce this podcast. So thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to be flying solo today. We've had some great guests on recently. We've had Peter Bernstein. We've had Bruce Foreman, we've had Josiah Bornasian, we've had Wallace Stelzer in last episode 13, but today I'm just going to fly solo and talk to you by myself. So let's go ahead and jump into this list of 10 important jazz standards you need to know and why. All right, so like I said, all these jazz standards I'm about to list to you, these 10 jazz standards, they're not only important because they are going to be called on gigs and jam sessions. I mean, they're all very popular jazz standards. They're well known. They're pretty commonly called. You know, it doesn't really matter what city you're in. They're probably going to be called. But also, each one of these songs has something very specific to teach us about jazz and can actually help us with learning other jazz standards. It's kind of, once you understand, these 10 songs, well, the concepts translate to a lot of other songs. So these are all important to know for these reasons. And I come up with this list of 10, I was inspired by some other lists that I've seen from others around. But I've come up with these because these particular are ones that have helped me. So I will be interested to hear your comments of songs that you would say are really helpful. You can leave that in the comment section below. But I'm going to go ahead and list mine and give you reasons for each. So I'm just going to kind of, list them off here. So the first one is Autumn Leaves, okay? Autumn Leaves is the first one I would suggest. And why would I say you should learn Autumn Leaves? Well, it's a great study of relative keys, okay? So, if we're in the key of, you could call it B flat major or G minor, but let's, for our sake, say it's in the key of B flat major. The song starts with a 2-5-1 in B flat major, 2-5-1 being an important chord progression, everybody should know. So, C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7. And then it goes to the relative minor. So it goes into the key of G minor. So then it goes A minor 7 flat 5, D7 altered or flat 9 into G minor 7. And that's kind of the whole song. So it's an incredible study not only of 2-5-1 chord progressions, one of the most important chord progressions in jazz, but it's also just a great study of relative keys. And it's a great song to even take into all 12 keys, or at least several different keys to practice, because the chord progressions aren't actually that hard to remember. And it's great just to practice those relative keys. So Autumn Leaves would be the first one I would suggest you should know. And the second one that I would suggest to know is All the Things You Are, okay? All the Things You Are. And the reason I suggest All the Things You Are is because it's a great study of the cycle of fourths, okay? Which is something that happens in jazz all the time. 2, 5, 1. Those are all cycling in fourths, okay? Right? Let's go back to the same chord progression as Autumn Leaves, okay? C minor to F, so C to F is a fourth, and then F7 to B flat major. Where from F to B flat major, that's a fourth. It's a perfect fourth. And the same with All the Things You Are, except for that it really is a continuous stream of these, right? A lot of cycling of fourths. F minor 7 to B flat minor 7 to E flat 7 to A flat to D flat. Okay, then a little chromatic step up, D minor 7, G7 to C major 7. That's the first little section there. So just a great study in the cycle of fourths, and a classic song. Everybody should know All the Things You Are. It's not necessarily the easiest song, but again, just a great song to kind of really start getting into those cycles. These cycle of fourths, you're just going to see them in jazz all the time. So it's really important to get a hold of that. So number 2 would be All the Things You Are. Number 3 is a song by Cole Porter. It's I Love You. This is a great song, I think, to know because for 2 reasons, actually. The first reason being it has an interesting progression because it starts on a minor 7 flat 5 for the 2 chord. So usually when the 2 chord starts with a minor 7 flat 5, or we also call that a half diminished chord, it kind of usually means that we're going into a minor key, okay? But in this case, we're actually not. The key's in F major, and so the first 3 chords are G minor 7 flat 5, C7, usually an altered, or a C7 flat 9 usually, to an F major 7. So it's a great practice with that particular chord progression, going with a half diminished 2 chord to an altered 5 chord to a major 1 chord rather than a minor 1 chord. So that's one practice, and you'll see that happen quite a bit in other songs as well. So the other reason I Love You is a great tune is because in the B section, it goes up a major third to the key in the major third, which would be A. So it's in the key of F major, but then the B section, it goes to the key of A. And that's something you will see in other songs as well. You will see that in I'm Old Fashioned. That's another song where that happens. So there's other songs like that. It's a kind of a Cole Porter thing. He does that kind of thing as well. So that's also just a good practice, just something to check out and work on. So number 3 is I Love You. Number 4 is Alone Together. And the reason I've chosen Alone Together is because it's a great song to practice minor 2 5 1s. They're just kind of everywhere in this song. It starts in D minor, there's 2 5 1s in D minor, and then it goes a 2 5 1 to the minor 4 chord, G minor. It cycles around. It also again does that, half diminished 2 to 5 to major when it goes to D major at the end of the first A section. So it also does that in the bridge, 2 5 to G minor, and then it does the same thing again, G minor 7 flat 5 to C7 to F major instead of F minor. So in general, this is just a great song to practice minor 2 5 1s, and there's a lot of songs that are great for practicing minor 2 5 1s. I mean, a minor blues of any sort, like Burke's Works. That's a great way to practice 2 5 1s. But I think Alone Together has some great harmonic movement, and then of course it's just a classic song. Everybody should know how to play that one. And the next one that I would say, number 5, would be It Could Happen to You. And the reason I would say It Could Happen to You is it's a great study in 1, 6, 2, 5, 1s and going into the relative minor again. Again, just a very classic song. It's one of those you just really gotta know. But it really kind of covers a big spectrum of, the diatonic series of chords that you can play. So it's just a really great study in all of that. And then it does go to the relative minor, like a lot of songs do. So yeah, I would say number 5 is It Could Happen to You. All right, the next one would be Sweet Georgia Brown. Number 6 is Sweet Georgia Brown. And I really think Sweet Georgia Brown is an excellent song to know just because it's really a study of cycling dominant 7th chords. And I feel like a lot of people have issues improvising over dominant 7 chords like this. Sometimes it's just confusing to know what to play. And so this is a really good song to do that because it's really just cycling dominant 7 chords all the time. F7 to B flat 7 to E flat 7 and then to A flat 6 or whatever you want to play there. It could be an A flat major 7. And so it's a great song just to kind of work on that, and it kind of hangs out on those dominant 7 chords for a while. So it's a great practice in cycling dominant 7 chords. And of course, other songs that cycle dominant 7 chords would be Doxy is a great one. Usually starts on B flat 7 and then goes to E flat 7, then A flat 7, then G7, then C7 and F7. So it's basically turning all these 2, 5, 1s and things like that into dominant 7th chords. And of course, any rhythm changes song. So Olio, Anthropology, or just I Got Rhythm. In the bridge, there's that series of dominant 7th chords, right? D7, G7, C7, F7. So those are also great studies. But just a great one in general would be Sweet Georgia Brown. So number 6, Sweet Georgia Brown, mostly because of that cycle of dominant 7th chord study. Okay, so number 7, I've chosen Just Friends. Okay, Just Friends. It's a great song. Again, another classic. Everybody seems to know Just Friends. And the 2 common keys for that song, it's either G major or it's F major. And the reason that I actually chose this is well, let me tell you a story, and that might help explain why I've chosen this particularly. I was in a master class. This must have been, I don't know, this was in college sometime years ago. And it was a master class with a great jazz guitar player, John Stoll. If you have never heard of John Stoll, check him out. And he was doing this master class at Jazz Society in Seattle. And I showed up. And at one point he says, okay, does anybody want to come up and play with me? And, young, arrogant, and all those things, I raise my hand, and of course, he picks me, and there's a bunch of people at this master class, mostly much older than me. And I sit down with John and my guitar, and he says, hey, what song do you want to play? Well, and I had been shedding Just Friends, so I said, yeah, I'd like to play Just Friends. And he said, okay, great, what key? And I said, C major. And without flinching, he said, okay. And the thing is, if you know Just Friends, you know that was kind of a mistake to call it in C major, because what I really meant to say was G major. And so we started playing the song, and I was playing it in G major, but the first chord of the song is C major 7, okay? But he was playing it in C major 7 because I said it was in the key of C major 7. So after a while, I started playing the melody, and he's playing the chords, and it sounds awful. It sounds terrible. Nothing is working right at all. And it took me a second to realize, I called it in C major 7, or in C major, not G major. And so it sounded awful. It sounded terrible, but I just couldn't get my brain around in the moment, and I was flustered. I couldn't transpose it. So I had to just say to John, hey, John, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm embarrassed. Can we stop the song? I called it in the wrong key. And he was very gracious and nice about it, but what he explained is, oh, okay, right, you have to be careful what key you call that one in, because it doesn't start on the tonal center. It starts on C major, which is the fourth, okay? It's the fourth, so it's an interesting song because it starts on the fourth of the diatonic series. So the key was in G major, but it starts on C. So it starts on C major, and then it goes to a C minor 7, which is also an interesting move, and then it goes to G major, and then the rest of the series of chord progressions, which is also a lot of more classic chord progressions. So I chose that song just because it's interesting that it starts on the fourth, and that's just a good thing to practice and to know, and even to do transposition in. So Just Friends is number 7. Number 8 would be Green Dolphin Street. Okay, Green Dolphin Street, another classic song. It's either played in C major 7 or it's in E flat major 7. There's kind of two common keys there, kind of like Just Friends. And I think, kind of the big thing that is a great practice about on Green Dolphin Street is it goes up a minor third to the next major key. So let's say we're in the key of C major. It also does have some interesting chord progressions, C major 7, then C minor 7, and this chromatic movement back down to C major 7. And so it's a great chord progression with that. And then it goes into a 6 or a 3, 6, and then 2, 5, 1 to C major. And then it hops up to the key of E flat major, okay? So like I said, a minor third up from C. And then it goes F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat major 7. And then a 2-5 back to C major to start that last A section again. So yeah, that's another chord that's another tonal movement you'll see a lot in jazz. So that's a great song just to kind of practice that movement. And you will see that again and again, and you'll recognize it when you'll see it. Like, oh, that's just like on Green Dolphin Street. So that's why that song can be especially important. All right, number 9. I'm losing count here. Number 9 is Stella by Starlight. Now, the reason I picked Stella by Starlight, it's kind of an interesting song because it's really not an easy song. It's actually very hard and complex, but for some reason, it's just kind of an expected to know song. Like everybody expects you to know it. So that's kind of one reason that you should know this, is just because it doesn't really matter how hard it is or how advanced or not advanced you are at playing jazz. You're going to be expected to know how to play Stella by Starlight. But more of a reason than that is it's just a really interesting, great harmonic study. Okay, it does all kinds of interesting things. A lot of 2-5-1s and different things like that, but just going all sorts of different places and interesting movements. And so I think it's just a great song to just study harmonic movement. All right, the big number 10 would be Have You Met Miss Jones? So again, another classic song. Everybody should know Have You Met Miss Jones? Great tune. So if any reason, it's just because everybody should know that song. But the first thing I would say why you should know this is because it's a great example of that passing diminished movement. So a common chord progression, a 1-6-2-5-1. So in this case, the key of Have You Met Miss Jones, F major 7, would be F major 7, D7, G minor 7, C7. But instead of that 6th chord, instead of that D7, what's happening is we're substituting it with a chromatic up from the 1, a diminished chord. So it would be F major 7, F sharp, diminished 7, G minor 7, C7, okay? So you're substituting the F sharp diminished 7 with a C7. You could just think of that being a half step up from, the F, from the tonal center, Okay, so that's a great study, and that's an important thing I think for musicians to practice is that diminished movement. It's something that there's a lot of theory behind. Diminished scales and applying it to chord progression. So that's a great one. And the other one that I think is really interesting, especially, is this goes before Coltrane changes. Which Coltrane changes. John Coltrane, he had this 3-tonal center series going on. And going down in major thirds. And that's actually, even though this is before Giant Steps, that's actually what's happening in the bridge of Have You Met Miss Jones. So it goes to the 4 chord, which is B flat, so via 2-5-1, so C minor 7, F7, B flat, major 7. Then it goes down a major third to the key of G flat major 7 via 2-5-1, so A flat minor 7, D flat 7, G flat major 7. Okay, then it goes down to D major 7. So down a major third to D major 7 via 2-5-1 again. So E minor 7, A7, D major 7. And then it does go back up to G flat major 7 again. But the 3-tonal series in this case would be B flat and G flat and D major. So that's an interesting study in it of itself. It's kind of a tricky bridge to play, but it kind of precurses this Coltrane changes thing. So it's a very interesting practice in and of itself. All right, and that's all for today's show. I want to thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you have any jazz standards that you think everyone should know and reasons why they should, feel free, if you're on the website, to leave us a comment in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. And all the music again today is by Ivanek Pranay, his album Breathe. You can go to cdbaby.com and look that album up to check that out. And if you did find value in today's show, consider adding value back. You can leave us a one-time or monthly donation by clicking the support button if you're on the website. And if you're not on the website, you can go to learnjazzstandards.com/support. We're going to be coming out with episode number 15 next week. We'll see you then.